This is American Dream.
Hey guys, we couldn't do this show without our sponsors. I want to personally thank our sponsor ViSalus for making American Dream possible. ViSalus' groundbreaking Body by Vi challenge is addressing America's growing obesity problem by helping hundreds of thousands of Americans shed unwanted pounds and live a healthier lifestyle. Do you want to be your own boss, control your own time, have the flexibility to earn additional part-time or full-time income? You can by promoting Body by Vi Challenge, the #1 health and fitness platform in North America. Whether you're a veteran looking for financial freedom or married to one and looking for a nest egg upon his or her return, start now. Over 100,000 new people are taking the challenge every month. Visit veteransamericandream.com to learn how.
You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime.
What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? If it happened, what would seem just too good to be true? What dream is inside of you that won't go away? This is American Dream with Kristen Best, the show where our guests have turned their dreams into reality.
Hi, I'm Kristen Best, and today on American Dream, we have an incredible guest who went from being a young gang member to a multi-millionaire entrepreneur. His childhood was extremely challenging. His family fell apart and he was living in poverty. He moved to a rough neighborhood and joined a gang to survive. He spent some time in jail. But an unexpected mentor showed him a way out of the darkness. He followed his passion and worked very hard. He turned his dreams into a reality. I'm pleased to welcome today's guest on American Dream, best-selling author, public speaker, and multimillionaire entrepreneur, Ryan Blair. Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Ryan, I just finished your book yesterday, Nothing to Lose. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Can you tell us about your tough start?
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I was a gang member, I was able to apply a lot of the things I learned on the streets. How to organize a bunch of people together toward one task. I learned about economics. I learned that the system of poverty really mirrors the system of the wealth. You're always leading people in poverty, and you're always, working toward a goal and having to fight for survival, so to speak. And the system of wealth is exactly the same. And in fact, it's much closer to that. Poverty is much closer to that of wealth than that of the middle class, for example, who pretty much sits there comfortably doing nothing, where, the poor people are always moving towards something and rich people are always moving towards something.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and kind of how you ended up where you were?
Well, so, my dad was a ex-military Vietnam vet. I have a military family, so I was raised with a strong regimen. I always had work ethic. I was always taught that, when you move quickly and you obey orders. Unfortunately, my dad got addicted to drugs when I was 13 years old, and so he disappeared on us, and he took down my entire family with him. I was the youngest of 6. My mother ended up becoming a drunk. My sisters and brothers got caught up in gangs and drugs, and, everyone went to jail, except for one sister. She managed to stay out of jail, but all of the rest of us, we got in trouble.
Well, when you were in jail, you had some interesting insights that I read about in your book. Can you tell us about those?
I was a young, scrawny white kid in jail, and it was a highly ethnic jail, so I was the minority. And I learned about, the strongest guy in jail wasn't the one who ran the jail. It was the smartest, the most manipulative. I learned all kinds of stuff. I learned sleight of hand, as guys would steal, my lunch by playing cards against me when I learned all kinds of stuff. I learned about intimidation. I learned about gangs. I learned about import-export businesses. I watched drug dealers in there. So I got to observe things because I was an outsider, but I was just trying to understand how the system worked.
I read about when you were in jail, you talked about people taking your milk and not letting anybody take that. Explain that for us.
Well, I'll give you my first lesson. I don't even think I wrote about this. So I used to have this pair of steel-toe boots. I got in a fight, and when I got locked up, they put me in jail, and you can't have steel-toe boots in jail. So they take off my shoes, and they throw me away. I was arrested like at 3 a.m., and so I wake up at 6 a.m., disoriented. It's actually my first time in, and I look down at my door, and there's a pair of Converse. So I throw them on, and I go sit, to the mess hall to go have breakfast. And all of a sudden, this guy walks up to me like he knows me, and I'm staring at him, and then he attacks me. And, I'm getting, attacked by a guy, my first, moment in jail. And I'm wondering, why is he attacking me? Well, he thought I stole his shoes. They weren't my shoes, right? So I realized that, if you take something from another person, if it's even perceived, that's all out war, right? So you get tested in jail. And then later on, a guy walks up to me and says, do you want that milk? And I realized immediately, if I handed them that milk, it's game over. They're going to take my milk forever. So I did the exact same thing that happened to me, and I attacked him for asking for my milk. And next thing you know, no one tried to steal my milk anymore. So it was a lesson learned by trial and error, so to speak. But it's, the same holds true in life. If you allow someone to take something from you, they're going to continue taking from you. So I've held that principle firm in business, where if I feel like someone's trying to steal my milk, I attack right back and I let them know that is not to be done, because people in business will try to steal from you just like they will in jail.
Yeah, that's a good lesson that you learned in there, and I know you've used it a lot.
Yeah, I have. I have a lot of attorneys that help make sure my milk doesn't get taken anymore. I don't fight it like I used to. I fight legally now.
It's good to have them on your side. Well, you had a major turning point in your life when you were young, and I believe it happened with your stepdad.
Yeah. Well, my mom was a beautiful woman like yourself. She had this heart of gold, and she didn't want me to go to prison like my brothers and sisters did. And she knew I was heading down the wrong track. I was starting to get involved in organized related crime. It wasn't just petty theft anymore, meaning, there was a lot of consequences and high stakes, and my mom knew that. So much so that, I had to move her from the front of the house where her bedroom was to the back of the house just in case we got, a drive-by or attacked. Friends of mine were murdered in drive-bys, and, stuff was getting really bad. So my mom really, she thought she was going to lose me, and she had this kind of sixth sense about my relationship with her. So one day she's at the deli, and this rich man comes in, starts flirting with her, and she says, well, I'll go on a date with you, but you have to meet my son first. And so he didn't know that her son was, one of the most organized criminals in our neighborhood. My mom says, this rich guy wants to meet you. And my mom also didn't know that I was really as bad as I was. And so I figured, a rich guy wants to meet me? Sure. There might be an opportunity there. And I took the meeting with him, but with all ill intent. But when I saw what a wonderful person he wasn't intimidating. He genuinely wanted to help me. He was sympathetic toward me. I realized that, I wasn't going to rob him. And maybe this was my mom's chance out of, the hell I'd put her in, so to speak. So I kind of made this deal with God that if this is our shot out, that I would, I'd honor it and I wouldn't steal from him.
I read a story that was really kind of funny, actually, on that note, about your stepdad when he brought over his two-seater car.
Yeah. Yeah, he pulls up, and we had this dirt driveway. I lived on the corner, and we used to play basketball at the park, and that was my chosen sport. So, I'd make spare money playing basketball against people in the park. And I see him pull up in this red sports car, and all the boys on the court are like, who's that? This white guy moving into our neighborhood pulls into my dirt yard. And I said, no, he's with my mom, stand down kind of thing, because people were always looking for someone to take something from. I remember walking up to him, and he said to me, he said, oh, why don't you come to dinner with me and your mom at my house? And he lived in this mansion. And my first inclination was, I don't want to go hang out with you and my mom, right? And he says, well, I tell you what, you drive. And I said, well, there's only two seats. And he says, well, I'll get in the trunk. And so then I was kind of, I was like, you're not going to get in the trunk, right? So he got, he got in the trunk. And then I drove him across town onto his, and I just remember thinking, as I have this rich man in my trunk, if I get pulled over, I'm going to prison.
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
This is very incriminating, right? This is not, first of all, I was thinking, am I being entrapped, right? Because a lot of cops were out to get me. This would not look good going before the judge. So we got in the trunk. I drove him to his house, and it was fascinating. It was, and I'll never forget, the irony is I walk into his home, and he's got marble as far as the eye could see. He lives on this lake. He's got boats. He's got maids. And I was just like, man, this is how the rich people live? Like, I had never been in a rich person's home. I'd seen the middle class because my dad was kind of middle class. I'd seen what poor was like, but I never really saw the rich. I saw it on TV, but to see a rich man, it's kind of like, they exist, but until you touch one and see one, you really don't know they exist.
Yeah, and then fast forward to he and your mom ended up getting married. Yeah. Right? And so you ended up going and living there.
Yeah. Well, he had to move my mom out of the neighborhood because she was being targeted. Rival gangs and rival drug dealers wanted to kill my mom. That was the best way to get me. Wow. I mean, it was simple. And I told him that. I said, that's why I moved my mom in the back of the house. That's why I have so many guns around me at all times, because the best way to get to me is get to my mother.
Scary.
Right? Because it'd be hard to get me because I was pretty protected at all times, but my mom wasn't. So when I told him that, he says, well, we got to move her out. We had no choice. And I wanted to stay back. He's rich. So I tried to tell him, leave the house over to me. And, and that'd be the best situation for a 17-year-old kid to have a house paid for. And he said, no, my mom wouldn't leave without me leaving. So I had no choice but to leave the neighborhood for my mom.
Good thing you did.
Yeah. You know what? I'm blessed. And now, I go back to that same very neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and I try to be that mentor that I was or that I received because, I got lucky, by the grace of God or whatever it was, I got a mentor, and I don't, and I've done well because of that. Now my goal is to be that mentor to other people.
Well, how did he help turn your life around? What did he do?
It's real simple, and this is what people don't understand when they hear about the story. They think that my mentor, my stepfather, gave me money. He didn't. What he did is he gave me a model of what a good businessman is and what a good man is, and I never had that. I had bad models. My dad was a bad model of a man, as were the OGs and the gangs that I was involved in. They were bad models. So I had a good model of a man, and I wanted to be a good man at heart, as I think most men do. And so I started following the right model, and that's what he gave me. He showed me the way. He showed me how belief systems are the most important aspect of what you want to do with your life. And he helped me reprogram my belief systems toward things like money and so forth.
I'm Kristen Best. You're listening to American Dream. With us today is Ryan Blair, who went from being a gang member to a multimillionaire. Well, Ryan, now let's talk about business. You started your first business when you were 21. What was the business and how did you get it going?
Yeah, I was working at a company. I got a job as an engineer. The reason why I got a job as a computer engineer was because when I was on the streets, I used to have this racket where we'd steal computers, and I had to learn how to reprogram them. So I liberated a bunch of computers, and I go into, there's an old bookstore called Egghead, and I go steal books on computer programming. I never went to school. I was a high school dropout freshman year, but I had to learn computer programming so I could make money. So I learned how to program computers. So naturally, I was at the right time and right place. I had some good computer skills. This is 1996, and so I got a job as an engineer, and this was when the dot-com era really began. The whole world started changing because of computers. I realized that the computers were always crashing. 24 hours a day, I was being called into work trying to fix a computer. So I decided to start a company called 24/7 Tech, which, it was real simple. If your network's a wreck, call 24/7 Tech. And I would then answer your call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'd get out of bed and come fix your computer for you. So then I started hiring other people. Much like I ran the gang, I'd basically buy low and sell high. I'd hire people to come do the same thing, and I'd dispatch them. And then I had about $1 million business on my hands. And then that parlayed into, because actually the United States Navy, they called my firm one day and said, we have a project for you. Will you do it? A ship-to-shore wireless computer system. They wanted us to out in Port Hueneme Naval Base, they wanted us to work on a wireless system that would broadcast data from the ship to the shore so that it could be interpreted. And I said I could start a business off of this. So the Navy gave me the information that I could start a commercial business called Sky Pipeline, and that led to about a $25 million business. How
did you start that? I mean, you got this idea through the Navy, but then how did you actually get that together?
So I was listening for the opportunity with regard to the Navy project I was doing, and this entrepreneur stumbles into my life and says, I have this idea to bring broadband wireless service to the city of Santa Barbara. And I said, really? Talk to me about it. With the perspective the Navy gave me, I then heard another guy's perspective. I bought his business for $15,000, and over a period of a couple of years, I turned it into a $25 million business. But that sounds complicated. The number one thing I can tell a listener out there is you just got to change your perspective to where you're looking for opportunity all around you.
Well, and then you did sell Sky Pipeline, and you have an amazing story about meeting the VCs and the lawyers in the boardroom. And about your payout.
Yeah. They stole my milk. I sold for $25 million, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my payout, and it was zero. And I thought, I'd put my life into this. I'd done my best, and I thought I was going to be rich. Like I really did. And when they did, I rebutted and I made sure they didn't get all of it. But, I made less than $1 million, but I made a lot more than I had at the time. So I was grateful. I got a reputation for being a solid startup entrepreneur. I knew a lot about VC and the games that they'll play with you and the provisions. And now, in fact, just recently, I announced officially that I'm starting my own VC fund, to help aspiring entrepreneurs with their ideas. So that way, they can understand that, how the game works and how contracts work and, get good deals, because these guys gave me a bad deal.
These guys were really tough on you.
Well, you know what? A VC's job is to steal an entrepreneur's money. That's generally their job. And if you know that going into it, if you know you're in the water with the shark, you'll act differently. But they're not acting like sharks. So my mission is, a VC's a shark. And if you you're going in the water with one, you'll be protected and it'll be a fair trade. But if you don't, they will take your milk.
They didn't take all your milk, which was good.
Yeah.
So, people like to know, did you have some fun with some of the money that you made?
Oh, no, I threw it all away. When you're a poor kid and you grow up dreaming about being rich. So I was only living with my stepdad for about 6 to 7 months before I got a job and got out on my own. The last thing he wanted was a punk kid living in his house, right? He just needed to get me off the streets. So, I was a poor kid who wanted want to be rich. And like all poor kids that want to be rich, we see cribs and lifestyles of the rich and famous. And so I started chasing, those lifestyles. I had fun. I pretty much threw it all away and then had to go back to work.
And when you went back to work, ViSalus was your next company, right?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was I said, maybe I should. My destiny is to share my story because I'd went through a lot. I'd reprogrammed myself by the grace of God. I'd been given such a gift of a mentor. So, the first thing I did is I went out there. I started sharing my story for free at public schools and jails, continuation high schools. I spoke on the USS Nimitz around that time. I was on a couple radio shows, and I started getting feedback about, hey, your story's making a shift in me. So I created a business with my co-founders of ViSalus, Nick Sarnicola and Blake Mellon, that would help me basically teach the subjects I was most passionate about, entrepreneurship, personal growth, and then our particular product is health, which I've always been passionate about health, whether it be when I was playing basketball or trying to lose some weight to get in shape or those types of things.
In your book, you talk about ViSalus, and you talk about the company, and you talk about some of the most difficult business situations you've been in.
Yeah.
And one of them at that company was in 2008 when the board called you into the boardroom and they read you the Riot Act. What was going on? Why was it so tough?
So I'd sold this company in August of 2008 for a deal pegged at $100 million. The times were shaky at that time, if you're familiar with what was going on in the recession. And so a lot of people on their board didn't like the deal. They said no. I convinced and persuaded certain people to say yes. The deal got done. I made a lot of money in August, and in September, the economy fell out, and the deal was worthless. I mean, they literally wrote off the company about 1 year later from there. And I'd worked tirelessly. I went to $1 an hour or $1 a year in terms of salary. I put all the money they gave me back in, and we were about to go out of business. They wrote off the stock publicly. I mean, it was a bad deal on their part, but I'd come up with a good idea with my co-founders and the leadership team in my company along the way, and they would not change their perspective, as I said earlier, to see my good idea. So they basically handed the company back to me. I ran with the good idea, and now that good idea does about $1 million a day in sales, and it's extremely profitable. So I'm very grateful that they didn't change their perspective, and I'm very grateful that I had to go through the ringer of our recession to get out on the other end, and now I'm in a better position than I've ever been in.
Well, how in the world did you do that? How did you make that massive turnaround? I read about it. It was $600,000 in sales a month, and then you turned it to $12 million in 15 months.
Yeah,
how did you do it?
And we're doing $1 million a day right now. I mean, every 30 seconds, I'm adding a new customer as we speak. So it's crazy. What I did is I tried to get right with who the consumer was. A lot of times people sitting in their ivory towers and boardrooms don't know who the end user is, right? So I really projected myself. I went into who's this person? Because I've come, from nothing. I know what it's like to be dirt poor. I can put myself into the shoes of a person saying, but I can't afford this. I can't afford to buy this. I can't afford to be healthy. I can't afford to lose weight. I can't afford to, start a business. I know that mindset because I came from there. So I went to that mindset. I acted like that person. I lived as that person. And then I tried to build a company around that person. And the reason why we continue to be successful is I haven't left that mindset.
I'm Kristen Best. You're listening to American Dream. With us today is Ryan Blair, who went from being a gang member to a multimillionaire entrepreneur. Well, Ryan, something else you wrote in the book was you talked about having to give up luxuries. Tell us, what did you give up along the way?
It's funny. So the other day, my book hit #1 New York Times bestselling book for the month of August, and they said, "Oh, he's an overnight success." And I said,
course.
"Oh, yeah, of course, right?" So yes, it was my first book. Yes, it looks like wow, overnight success. I went back and I took the days of the amount of hours that I've actually been working on my life in terms of as a professional entrepreneur, and this is just one more professional entrepreneurial thing that I've done. Right? It's about 67,000 hours of hard work. So I started about 19 years old working on as a professional entrepreneur, staying at home, sacrificing the TV, not going out, not drinking Starbucks, making my own coffee so that way I could save the money. And I had that mindset, just really focused on I'm going to sacrifice.
Did you ever feel like you had a breaking point, or it was just too much?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? But that's when excellence occurs. And I'm sure, I'm talking to some audience members that know what hard work's all about. It's when you push your body or your mind past where you think you can that you become a bigger, better person, right? It's when you walk off that field and you say, I dug that hole for, 18 hours and hours 12 through 18, I didn't think I could make it, and I did. You have to stretch your limits. Your mind is a powerful thing, and if you're not stretching it, you'll never get there. I still stretch my limits, where I say, I don't think I can do it. I do it. And those are the times when you really feel like you've done something.
It's true. Well, our incredible AFN audience, they're courageous. And I heard one time that courage is the physical and mental control of fear, not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
And I know you've been in some scary situations.
Yeah.
How do you handle your fear?
Yeah, and I want to say, men and women of the military, I think you guys are the most talented folks on the planet to get involved in business. Because you face the flash of a muzzle in many cases, or you've had to work extremely hard. You know what hard work's like. You know what fear is like. And a lot of people in business, they have no idea what that's like, right? So, I've faced the flash of a muzzle, and when you face that, what's going to happen if you lose, I don't know, a couple $1,000s, or you lose your job, or you lose. So, if you understand how to really resist fear, you're well equipped and well trained to be in business. That's for sure. So that, I face fear in business all the time, but because I've always thought like I have nothing to lose, which is my mantra and my mindset, then I don't let those fears overwhelm me. I do get afraid. I can't say I've never felt fear, but I don't let it overwhelm me because I have this, natural resistance to fear.
I'm Kristen Best, and you're listening to American Dream. With us today is Ryan Blair, who went from being a gang member to a multimillionaire entrepreneur. Well, hey, Ryan, let's talk now about mentors. I know you had a good one in your stepdad. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about that? A little bit, what kinds of things did he introduce you to, like Earl Nightingale?
Yeah, my stepdad, first thing he did, I'd never read a book in my entire life. I was a freshman in high school when I dropped out. I went to what's called a continuation high school, which is where they send the really bad kids to become really bad kids. So I had no formal education. So he gave me a series of audio tapes because I couldn't read. I'm dyslexic. I have ADD. I have all kinds of learning disabilities. And so he gave me an audio series by Lead the Field. And the audio series taught me some things about attitude that I'll never forget. And I just started changing my belief systems around this new information that had never been taught to me.
Well, on that note, a lot of people want mentors.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times they think, how am I going to get a mentor?
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, the good news is if you want something bad enough, you'll figure it out. There are mentors that have put up profiles all over Facebook, that have blogs, that have Twitter accounts. They want to help. And I think that there is no greater service to, a mentor such as myself to help a person with military experience that needs, help whether it be coming back home or has an idea or whatever it is. So, I think there's a whole lot of people out there that would love to help the men and women, that are listening to this right now. And I think you could find them on Facebook, on Twitter, and really make a good connection with them. But I will tell you this, mentorship is a two-way street. You have to offer value if you're going to request value. So a lot of people will hit me up and say, mentor me. But I don't see what they're going to give me back in return. And they could say they'll give me anything. They'll, whatever it is. I'm just looking for mutual exchange, right? One guy, for example, he wrote a workbook on my book, and now I'm mentoring him because he took the time to write a simple workbook about my book. I'll take the time to mentor him, right? So it's a give and take thing. A lot of times people just want the take side of it. With my mentor, he made me wash his clothes, dry clean wash his clothes, shine his shoes, sand his deck, clean his boat, clean his bird poop. I mean, I had to do all those things in exchange for the mentorship.
Hey, if someone out there has a dream to start a business, and I'm sure a lot of these people do when they get back, what's the best way to get started?
Don't wait till you get back. Start now. When you have a good idea or you have a passion, it must start today. Don't put it off till tomorrow.
Can you give us a final thought on people that are pursuing their dream?
You got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Just remember that. And particularly with people listening to this, you know what it's like. You know what it's like to, to face the instincts of survival head on in many cases. So since you know what that's like, that's your biggest asset. Use that as your asset. See that as your advantage, not your disadvantage.
If you'd like to learn more about Ryan and his book, Nothing to Lose, please visit his website at nothingtolose.com. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I really want to thank our sponsor, Visalis Sciences, for making this show possible. Visalis' groundbreaking Body by Vi challenge is addressing America's growing obesity problem by helping hundreds of thousands of Americans shed unwanted pounds and live a healthier lifestyle. Do you want to be your own boss, control your own time, have the flexibility to earn additional part-time or full-time income? You can by promoting Body by Vi Challenge, the #1 health and fitness platform in North America. Whether you're a veteran looking for financial freedom or married to one and looking for a nest egg upon his or her return, start now. Over 100,000 new people are taking the challenge every month. Visit veteransamericandream.com to learn how. I'm Kristen Best. Thanks for listening.